Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Ciel DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Hollie Rich. She is the president and founder of Stuck on Hue, a concierge service for people decorating without the help of a professional interior designer. Hollie believes good design is for everyone, so her mission is to break down barriers that design enthusiasts face when decorating on their own. She provides expert guidance and helps them procure to-the-trade products that will make their homes feel special. For those of you who have maybe recognized Hollie's name, if you're a member of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library, Hollie at one time was making pillows. And we're going to talk about that journey today and how her business has evolved and changed over time. I really hope that you enjoy hearing from Hollie today. Hollie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. You and I had tried to do this a little while ago and life was busy, and now we finally get a chance to sit down and talk. It's really nice to have you here.
It is very nice to be here. I'm excited.
One of the reasons I had really looked forward to speaking with you is I know that the answers to some of your questions are going to be very different than some of my other guests, but you have a very different business model. So first, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about who you are, where in the world you are, and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your business and what that's like.
Okay. Well, my husband and I live in Louisville, Kentucky, where I've lived my entire adult life. I grew up in Indianapolis. We met at college in Cincinnati, and then we've lived here. So we live in Louisville in a historic neighborhood for Louisville age anyway, and with our 3 cats, and our adult son lives in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just the 2 of us here.
Okay. And you have a business that is a little bit different than a lot of my listeners. So why don't you tell us a little bit? First of all, I love the name of your business.
Thank you.
Stuck on Hue.
Stuck on Hue. My husband came up with that years ago. I have always been all about color and pattern, and so I wanted to incorporate that in the name. And he came up with Stuck on Hue, which was a play on the phrase "stuck on you."
Right, and I love that.
And it stuck.
Right, literally.
Yeah.
All right,
Literally.
so tell us about how your business started. Let's start with this, and then we'll go into how it has evolved.
Sure. Well, way back when, I had been in corporate marketing for most of my adult life before that, and I was just feeling unfulfilled. And I had left a job where I wasn't happy and was kind of just figuring out what I was going to do next. I was volunteering at my son's school at an animal shelter, but I, was just thinking about where I wanted to go. At the same time, I loved decorating my house always. That was a big hobby of mine. And we had hired an interior designer to help us with our living room. And he had talked us into this sofa that didn't really meet our style, but we didn't know any better at the time. And I just kept buying this succession of throw pillows, trying to make the sofa work in our space. Wasn't working. And my husband kept saying, "Why are you buying more pillows?" And so I thought, if I could teach myself how to make pillows, then it would be much less expensive. I could switch them out however I wanted to, whenever I wanted to, and he wouldn't complain. So I had never grown up sewing. I mean, I took a little sewing class here and there, but I dusted off the sewing machine that he had bought me years before that had really never been used, figured out how to use it, and then read and watched all the online tutorials I could find about how to make a knife edge pillow with an invisible zipper. And I did. And I was really excited about the result. I was kind of showing it off on Facebook, and someone said, "Hey, you could do that for a living." And I thought, this is absurd. Like, I'm not a sewist. This is crazy. But a few days, a few weeks went on, and I thought, here I am trying to figure out what to do. I feel like I don't have any kind of decorating money to spend right now while I'm not working full time. So, hey, why not open an Etsy shop and maybe sell 2 or 3 pillows a week or a month just to get a little extra decorating money. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what started all of this. And then quickly it snowballed into something much bigger than I expected. I enjoyed what I was doing. The demand was there for people that wanted to buy pillows and didn't know how to sew them themselves, just like I was before. And so business just took off. So suddenly, here I was having a full-time business as an entrepreneur that I never intended, and I was sewing full-time as a non-sewist. So I kind of just knew what I knew how to do, and I had to learn as I went. I didn't have anybody in my life that was a sewist, so I really leaned on online tutorials. Workroom tech didn't exist at the time, but it was, people that are involved in the industry that were generous with their information on the internet. And so I just kind of learned techniques as I went, and just made a business of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Hollie, I think it's so fascinating because so many of us kind of started our businesses without actually intending to. Very, very similar in like someone would show up at our front door with fabric and say, "Oh, I see what you did at your house. I'd like you to do it for me." And it's been an interesting comparison when I hear younger people who had the internet to use because it didn't exist when I first started, but that it's still a similar thing. But so you had not neighbors showing up, but people showing up at your Etsy shop and looking for the things you're selling, and sort of falling into a business without actually intending to. And that I see a little bit less of that now. I think some of the newer people coming into the industry are a little more intentional about it. But I also find that it's so many of us loved what we were doing, that this was a natural progression. But you learned to do it so that you could get something out of it, not like, oh, I love to sew. What can I do with this? So definitely a different twist on this story of entrepreneurship for women.
For sure. And what I found is that, so I did the pillow shop for 10 years. I started on Etsy, and then after a few years, I opened my own website once I felt like I was driving more business than Etsy was bringing to me. And then eventually I closed the Etsy shop and just operated on my website. And over the years, my taste level got better as far as like what fabrics I was using. I was kind of evolving in my design knowledge. I was kind of soaking up interior design at every level, following interior designers on social media, reading design books. I curated the selection of fabrics that I use. So a lot of workrooms, they are working with the fabrics that people bring to them. They don't get to decide what it is they're working with. They may love it. They may think it's hideous. On my end, I was creating a collection of fabrics people could choose from. So everything was made to order. And I had, at the beginning, 5 or 10 fabrics to choose from. And at the end, there were 75 fabrics that I had curated that fit all a certain aesthetic. And people could choose their fabric, their size. I've offered sizes from little lumbars to big lumbars and all kinds of squares. They could choose whether they wanted the fabric on both sides, or they wanted a solid linen or a ticking stripe on the back. They could choose their trims, like a self-welt or a contrast piping or a ruffle or a flange. So I had all these different options. That's part of what I think drew people, is they could really customize, and I kind of led them through that process. Or they would ask, well, does this fabric go with this fabric? Could I use them together on my sofa? So I was kind of helping them along. And that part of it is what I really enjoyed, was the putting together the collections of fabrics and helping people, decide what looked good in their room. What I didn't love was the sewing part, which is, I know, ironic. But if I could have found someone to do the sewing for me, that would have been ideal. I tried out kind of 3 people over the years on special projects. It wasn't a good fit. I'm a super perfectionist, like super meticulous. They didn't quite meet my standards, but also as a non-sewist, I just didn't know anybody. Really, I didn't know where to go. I just kept waiting for the sewing fairy to drop this person in my lap, and that never happened. So I loved the end product, the pillows that were going out into people's homes. I didn't love the sewing. So I was never super happy. I always wanted something a little different, but I kept going because I was successful. People liked what I did. I felt good about my product. But there was always just a little something that wasn't right, but I didn't know how to fix it.
Right,
I didn't know what
right.
else to do. Yeah.
And Holly, it's interesting because I think that the way you started this business, you were very selective, like you said, aesthetic. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always impressed when I work with an interior designer who has a client who does not share the same aesthetic as the designer, and
Mm-hmm.
yet they are
Yeah.
still able to design a beautiful room or home or whatever it is, or a pillow, whatever it happens to be, because
Right.
that is outside my realm of capabilities. If I
Mm-hmm.
think something is not attractive, I don't know how to work with it. And again, as a workroom, some of my designers have brought me fabrics where I go, don't really love that, but I see it in the if it's pillows and I see it in the whole room with other fabrics and colors, I go, oh yeah, I get this. It looks beautiful. Again, doesn't have to be my taste.
Right.
So I'm seeing this theme with you that you really niche down and
Mm-hmm.
and you're not offering 10,000 fabrics and you are not.
Right.
So if someone's aesthetic does not agree with yours or they don't care for it, then they're just not your customer.
Right.
And you were busy for 10 years that way.
Right. And when I started, now I will say, when I started, I was kind of all over the place. I was just kind of learning about design myself,
Mhm.
and I brought the fabrics into my shop that I felt like were popular at the time.
Okay.
Some of them I loved, some of them I didn't, but they were popular from kind of some research that I had done. Um, I also, at the time, had a big range of price points because I thought at the time, well, gosh, I need to be able to appeal to everyone. You know, not everyone can afford a designer pillow. Some
Mhm.
people just want, you know, something a little less expensive, and I should be able to offer something to everyone. And later I realized, well, that's just not my job. Like, I don't have to be there for everyone. There's a business for everybody. I don't have to be all of that.
Right.
So over the years, I realized how all over the place I was, and I kept kind of refining. And 7 years into it, I did a rebrand. So before that, all of my branding and my logo and all of that had been very DIY.
Okay.
And then I invested in a graphic designer to help me kind of pull my color scheme for the brand and logos together. I reworked my whole website. And that's when I really, really refined what my aesthetic was.
Mhm.
So I was appealing to people that are in that like new traditional. So kind of
Okay.
the current version of grandma chic. A lot of big florals and the little prints that go with them. A lot of kind of blues and pinks and greens, that was very appealing. It was kind of during that grand millennial time where there were a lot
Right.
of people seeing these this traditional decorating for the first time and kind of doing it in a new way. So that really did help me niche down. So even though I was offering 75 different fabrics that people could choose from, they were all exactly like you said, within a certain aesthetic, and those
Right.
became my people. I
Okay.
lost some customers that, you know, my products no longer appealed to them, and that's
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
because they found somewhere else to go. But then my shop appealed to people that had that particular aesthetic, and I became kind of one of their go-tos in the pillow world,
Okay.
if that's the style that they like.
Okay. So I am curious about something. Did you ever get approached about making other products besides pillows?
I over the years, I have notebooks and notebooks of ideas. I am someone who has ideas coming out the wazoo, but it's the getting them done that I'm not always the best at. So when I first started the pillow shop, I assumed that I would have time to do pet beds and shower curtains and just all the things. And I would have loved to, but the pillows just took off and I never had time to do anything else. Except I did do stockings. So several years into it, I had been collecting the like remnants or scraps from that were left over from pillow making and setting those aside. Um, and added in the fall or winter, Christmas stockings. So
Okay.
originally I was using those scraps that were left
Mhm.
over from pillows and just what I had available, making stockings from those. So I might have had like two of one kind and, you know, three of another and five of
Right.
this. And I was making those pre-made, unlike the pillows that were made to order, because I was using what I had. And so those stuck around, and I ended up later also just ordering fabric specifically for those and not using scraps anymore because the demand
Right.
was higher than the scraps that I had. Um, So the stockings was the only line extension I ever did.
Okay.
I did have people asking about bolster pillows a lot, which those are still pillows, but that was something I didn't know how to do. And so I put
Okay.
it off for years, even though I love the look of them. I just put it off because like I don't have time to learn this skill. Like it's just a little bit different. You have
Right.
to figure out, what inserts are going to be the right ones. But finally, it was an interior designer that was using me, and she's the one that finally pushed me how to learn to do bolster. So I did those. They were beautiful, but I never offered those in my shop.
Okay.
So it was really just the stockings was the only extra thing. People did ask me actually about curtains all the time,
That's
window
what I was
treatments.
thinking. Yeah,
Yes,
because
yes,
people tend to think, oh, you sew,
yes,
therefore you can do this. There are lots of
exactly.
different kinds of sewing.
Exactly. I never made window treatments. And as a matter of fact, to this day, I pay someone else to do that for me. It's just, I know, other people don't understand. It's different skills, it's different equipment, it's different space requirements, to do those things. So,
Yeah.
could anyone that knows how to sew make curtains? Of course, yes. But I just didn't enjoy working with big swaths of fabric. I really liked working on the small items.
Mhm.
And because I had such a demand for those, I just never needed really to force myself to learn the other things.
Right, right.
So I just always turned people down that wanted to do window treatments. But over the years, I would say, or people would know that I wouldn't make the window treatments them myself, but they would say, well, I can find a local, workroom to do that, but they don't have access to these fabrics.
Okay.
So they would ask me, could I buy yardage from you, from these brands that you already use and have trade accounts with, to have window treatments made, or to have someone reupholster a chair for me, or, whatever other project they had going on.
Right.
And I would say, well, sure, of course, I would be happy to sell you the yardage or trim yardage. So that kind of happened along the side. It was just kind of a little side business.
Mhm.
And at first, it was just a few people here and there. And then it really picked up because there's so many people that love interior design. For whatever reason, they're not going to be hiring an interior designer full time to work with them, but they want to use those same products they see their favorite interior designers using.
Right.
So that's kind of what led later into what I do now.
Okay. So
Yeah.
tell us what you do now and how you've kind of let go of the pillow part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So um, when I was doing the pillow shop, I was working just all the time. Like if I was sitting on the sofa, my computer was in my lap, you
Yeah.
know, answering questions or whatever. Um, on the weekends, I was often working. I can remember a time we had some friends that have a pool. They invited us over on a regular basis in the summers to go swimming. And sometimes I would just decline because I was too busy. Other times I would feel guilted into going, but the whole time I was there, I was anxious about the work I wasn't getting done. And that's
Yes.
just
I know
no
that
way to
feeling.
live.
No, it is not. I
No,
agree.
that was crazy. So, 3 years ago, I got this weird long illness that forced me to close my pillow shop for about 3 months while I was diagnosed and recovered. And that was just a real wake up call to realize I've got to make a change. I mean, I didn't get the sickness because I had been overworked, but it just really made me stop and reflect. So that was kind of the starting point for my mind shifting into, all right, I got to do something different. And I went, once I got better, I reopened the shop, and for about the next year, business was back to normal, but business was also back to normal. That meant I was working all the time again. And I just couldn't seem to get myself out of that habit. So I started to think, all right, I've really got to make some changes. I've got to decide what is going to come off my plate so that I can control my schedule. And no matter what I thought about, I just kept kind of realizing that I was going to get back into the same habits.
Right.
So after a while, I realized instead of deciding what's going to come off my plate, I really had to just wipe the plate clean. Everything comes off. And then I have to think about all the things and decide what would come back on.
Okay.
And pillows did not make the cut. So I spent 10 years making pillows full time. And then suddenly, without any warning to my customers, really, I just decided for my sanity, I had to let those go because I knew that nothing was really going to change. I even
Right.
thought about switching from like made to order pillows that I had been doing for 10 years to what if I just like dropped a collection of pillows every few weeks or every month, like like a big retail store would, Crate and
Right.
Barrel, Ballard Designs, whatever they've got their, new spring collection. Here it is.
Right.
Take it or leave it. Limited time. And I thought, okay, that's great. Then I can control my schedule. I could just work during the days. When the collection's ready, I'll release it. And also, that would allow me to do what I enjoyed about my job, which was the putting together of the collections, deciding what fabrics. That's what really got me jazzed. And that's what I liked about making the holiday stockings too, because once I moved past just using scraps, I was deciding what fabric to use for the body and what fabric to use for the cuff and what trim to put on it. And that's the part that I really enjoyed. So the idea of doing collections every few months kind of got me excited. But as I got closer to making those final decisions and ordering the fabrics, I started feeling this anxiety build up. And I realized that, you know what, it was still going to be sewing, which, as I said before, was not my love.
Right.
um, so I really didn't like the idea of just sitting, having to sew all the time again.
Right.
Funny, I know. So pillows just really left the table completely. They didn't get put back on. And what I decided to do instead was really lean into that growing arm of my business that I mentioned a while back, which was helping people procure those designer to the trade fabrics that they couldn't get on their own.
Okay.
So either they were, going to be working on projects on their own, like sewing their own curtains,
Mhm.
or they were working with a workroom that didn't have access to those same fabric brands. So I knew there was a demand for it. There were more and more people decorating without the help of a designer, but really they had money and they had the desire.
Right.
My husband didn't quite believe that the demand was there for me to do that full time. But I took a leap of faith. I really felt like if I leaned into that 100%, that I could really grow that part of the business. And so that's what I did. Shut off the pillows completely and announced that this is the new thing I'm doing.
And how did your clients respond to that?
Well, there were some people, of course, that were disappointed because they used me as a resource for pillows. They knew they could trust me, my craftsmanship. They knew I had, fabrics that they liked. So that was a bummer because I'm a people pleaser and I hated to disappoint some people. However, I knew that after just killing myself for 10 years, and Hollie the person had completely disappeared into Hollie the business owner. Like myself as an individual just did not exist anymore. It was just I was just the business. So I knew I had to do it. It was just it was time.
Right.
So yeah, people were disappointed, but at the same time, people were really excited about this new venture. And
Okay.
I've never advertised, but word kind of started going around. People that I had relationships with that were, popular on Instagram would tell people about what I'm doing, or I helped one person and then her friend comes over and says, wow, how did you get this fabric? And she tells
Right.
someone else. So it started spreading. And within the first 3 months or so, things were going great. And I moved past just the fabrics and trims and wallpapers that I had been offering for years. And I added lighting, lampshades, furniture, rugs, chip blinds, basically anything that wasn't kind of kitchen and bath,
Mhm.
related that you could order through an interior designer. You could order that through me instead if you were
Okay.
decorating on your own.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to back up for a second. You were talking about how much you were working, and if you were
Yes.
on the couch, you had a laptop on your lap. Was your website set up in a way that people could order from the website, or was there a lot of interaction between you and your clients? How was that? How did that work for you?
When I was doing pillows,
Mhm.
okay. The website was set up where they could go and order on their own. So you could choose the fabric and the size. Did you want to add a trim? But there were a lot of questions back and forth.
Right.
Does this go with this? Or what do you think about this pillow in my bedroom? Or what size should I use? So there was a lot of coaching. And for years, I have wanted to start a blog because people wouldn't think about how much information there actually is that you could share about even just pillows.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's even like, there were fabrics that I would love and wanted to use in my shop, but the scale was too large. The repeat was too large. So it looks great on a curtain, maybe on a big sofa, but not on a little pillow. Right. So it was, things like, and pattern placement. Someone would want to know, well, why does the pillow cost this much? And I never compromised on my pricing, but sometimes I would have to explain, like, well, this pattern has a larger repeat, or the way it's laid out, across the width. I can't cut two pillows side by side in the size you need. I have to cut, one on top of the other. And so there's all this extra waste. And it's just those kind of things that I just felt like I was constantly educating people
right.
About their decision making or why things were the way they were.
Okay. And now you're helping them make decisions in a totally different way.
In a totally different way. So I am still constantly communicating with people, every day. But it's a communicating that I am really enjoying, and it's what keeps me going. So that's the important thing. So once I stopped making pillows, I obviously had to change my website completely, because before it was all about, go here, make your selections, place your order. It pops over to me, and within, however many weeks, I'm sending you a completed, and it was always the pillow cover. It wasn't the pillow with the insert. Tried that. It was a kind of a pain to deal with. So I just did the pillow cover, shipped it off to them, and then they stuffed it on their end. I told them like what size insert to use for the best fit, and then they put it together themselves. So I had to completely redo my website to talk about, now I've got a service business instead of a product-oriented business, and explain what that was. And that continues to evolve. I'm in the process of working on it now, just to make it simpler and more clear. So what people can do now on my website on their own, they can go and order a fabric sample or a wallpaper or a rug sample or a trim sample. So those, I have a drop-down box that lists all the different brands that I use. So you pick the brand, and then you have to type in the product name, the colorway, and then that gets sent to me. I place the sample order with whatever vendor, and then it usually ships right to them. Sometimes I'll have people order one sample. I've had people order like 20 something samples at a time. So I never know sometimes I don't know what people are even working on. I have no idea what project they're working on. They're ordering 3 yards of such and such fabric from me. I don't know if they're having pillows made, or if they're doing a Roman shade, recovering a chair. I have no idea. Sometimes they tell me, which is fun.
Yeah.
I really need to get photos of a lot of people's finished projects, which will be fun to see them. But I provide a lot of guidance along the way. So I kind of just figured that I'm kind of in between an interior designer and a workroom. Okay. I kind of have the knowledge from both sides.
That's what I was just thinking. You bring that experience of, even if you haven't made window treatments, you know what's involved in some of this. Okay.
Yes. So frequently I'm kind of the person that provides information before they get to the workroom. So I'm hopefully helping workrooms not have to do as much hand-holding, because I'm doing the hand-holding on my end. So I'm preparing people more. So on my end, I constantly get asked about, well, how many yards do you think I need to recover this sofa that I bought on Facebook Marketplace? Or what about if I do this kind of shade on my window, how many yards do you think I would need? Or I know someone's going to reupholster a chair, and the other day someone said she wanted to use a velvet, and she wanted to do ruffles on the skirt of her chair. So I had to explain, well, velvet doesn't really do ruffles. Like, that's just not really going to work. So you have to decide, do I want to do velvet? And if so, you need to do a tailored skirt, and maybe you could add a trim on it. Or if you want a gathered ruffled skirt, you're going to have to go in a different direction fabric wise. So those are the kind of things I'm helping with just every day. Or pattern placement, such as on a sofa. If you have a large repeat, and that person that bought the sofa on Facebook Marketplace, they think they've got getting a deal. Now they want to recover it. You might need 10 yards. You might need 25 yards. Depends on the fabric. Do you want a skirt? What is it? Is it a loose cushion, or is it, a flat back? So all of those things factor into the amount of yards you need, which anyone that has workroom experience knows that, and the general public just doesn't know.
Right.
So hopefully, like I said, my people that I work with are more prepared when they go to the workroom, and hopefully I'm saving workrooms time quoting things that are never going to come to fruition.
Right.
I had someone that came to me, she wanted to do a whole bed tester canopy thing, and she had about a $3,000 budget, which seems generous. However, she was going to need 20 some yards of fabric, and the fabric she wanted to use were 200 something dollars a yard.
Right.
And that just wasn't going to work.
Right. That does not compute.
That does not compute, exactly. So I had to talk to her about, well, what's your priority? Do you want to up your budget, or do we want to look at less expensive fabrics? Or, what about you can use the more expensive fabric on the outside, but do a lesser expensive, stripe or check or something, as the interior lining. So we made it work. She's happy now. But that kept her from going to her workroom and having the workroom do all these calculations that were never going to happen in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the other side of it is when a customer shows up to a retail workroom and says, I have 3 yards of this and this is what I want. And
right.
not having the experience to know that, no, in fact, you're going to need 9 yards. It's like,
right, exactly.
So that's, I'm thinking, like, if you were referring work to me, I'd be thrilled to have you do that for the client, so that I didn't then have to have the conversation. Okay, not only is this not enough yardage, but I can't use cut yardage. I need you to buy one piece that's this long. Yeah, because that's upsetting to people. And I totally understand it, but it's kind of like when some of us started our businesses, we only knew what we knew, and we would learn as we went, but there were some expensive lessons in that. And
absolutely,
most owners are not willing to make those expensive or learn expensive lessons.
Yeah. So I'm saving people on both ends, both my clients and the workrooms that they're reaching out to work with. Hopefully I'm saving everybody time and hassle and headaches, and that the clients will end up with, their dream thing in the end, even if it's different than what they originally thought it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I had reached out to you is that you had shared on the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library your workspace.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
And we'll be sharing that at another date. But if you could tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Yes. Well, I've always worked out of my home since I was making pillows and everything. And we had moved into this house about 2 years prior and just kind of shoved everything into place as quickly as possible and got back to work. So I didn't paint anything beforehand in my workspace. So to back up, I've got two rooms, adjacent rooms in the upstairs of my home. So I've got light, which is wonderful. I know a lot of people work from their basements. So I've got natural light, which is great. But I am definitely an aesthetic person. I really would like to work in a beautiful place. And even though I was surrounded by beautiful fabrics all the time, the walls were this leftover gray from the prior owner. And I just kind of shoved things all around. And even though I was fairly organized, there was just a lot of visual clutter. So it just wasn't a fun place to work, but it was functional. But I had reached out to a business consultant to kind of help me level up my business. And one of the things that she had identified is that I was telling her that craftsmanship and details were really important to me and my business and the work that I put out, but I wasn't showing that on my social media or on my website. So she said, all right, Holly, you've got to get a photo shoot scheduled where the photographer can photograph you doing these details, like, putting a ruffle on a pillow or, cutting welt strips or whatever. Just talk about the methods and the details that go into the making of the pillows. I said, great. I absolutely agree, but my space is not camera ready. I've got my work table, but everything around that is just kind of icky looking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not how I wanted my business to be represented in a photograph.
Okay.
She said, okay, great. Well, you've got some work to do. So I
Oh, we
said,
love
okay.
that.
And it was really the push that I wanted. I really needed, I just hadn't done it. So the first thing I did was organized. And like I said, even though I was pretty organized, I had bins for things. It was just a lot of, you could still see it all.
Right.
I had bins tucked under my desk and my sewing table. I had bins organized on a plastic shelving in my office, but it just all still felt cluttered. So the first thing I did was I got rid of anything that I knew I needed to deal with anyway, because I was going to paint the space and wallpaper. So I knew things had to leave. A lot of stuff had to leave. So, there was a shelf of fabric remnants, rolls of fabrics that were left over from previous projects or before I changed the aesthetic of my shop that just didn't fit in anymore. I just hadn't dealt with them. They were just shoved in a corner. We all have those corners.
Yes, we do.
I got rid of any of that stuff. Anything that was not going to be brought back in after I had the space painted, it just left, and I decided I'll deal with it when it's sitting in my guest room, annoying me in there. So I did that, and then I started organizing. I started thinking about my layout. Mm-hmm. So anytime you're decorating a space, you want to think about your space planning first. Is there anything that I can move around differently? And then is there anything I can hide away that I don't need to see? Even just little things, like we all in a workroom, you need access to lots of stuff all the time, right? But sometimes there are things that can be tucked away. You don't need it right there where your eyes can see it. It can be in a drawer, or overflow stuff can be kept elsewhere and brought out as needed. So one of the things I did was I repurposed a dresser that had been in another room of my house and brought it into my office. And this kind of ugly plastic shelf full of little storage bins of stuff went away, and I just stored those things in the dresser. So not only was it closed storage, so I didn't have to see the things, but also it made the space feel more homey instead of just feeling industrial.
Right.
And then on top of the dresser, I added ginger jars, which I had collected ginger jars, and they were in other places in my house. And I brought up these 4 ginger jars to put on top of the dresser. You take the top off, there's space inside. Mm-hmm. So I put things like trash bags in there, extra thread, markers. So it was pretty. Right. And it made it feel more homey, but it was also storage. So I thought, wow, this is genius. This is great. I love this. So I kind of did those sort of things. Like I said, anything that didn't have to be seen and out got tucked away somewhere. I really thought about my workflow better, my different stations and where things could be. In my office, under my tables, I had big bins that were stored underneath, but I realized I need to skirt these tables so I don't have to look at the bins. They're tucked under there, but I still see them all the time. There was a little nook of my office. I don't have a closet, but there's a little nook where I thought I can put all the big, ugly, chunky stuff in here that can't tuck away somewhere else, and then I'll curtain that off.
Oh, right, right.
So I'll have a pretty curtain, but the stuff will be back there, easily accessible, but I don't have to look at it. One of the other things I did, you really had to take a hard look at your space and think about, what am I doing just because I've always done it that way? Or what?
Yes.
What can be changed? You just have to look at it differently. So I mentioned these 2 big tables. They were pretty. They were nice looking. One served as my desk and one served as my my sewing table. Those were the tables that had big storage underneath, but they were really long. And my office is in this quirky little kind of bedroom-ish space with slanted ceilings. Okay. And we have this attic access space via 2 doors on either side of my office room. But the tables were so long that they blocked access to the doors. So I wasn't using the storage at all. So even though I had these 2 great looking tables that were sturdy, did their job, they were keeping me from something else that I needed to have access to. So I decided I've got to just move away from these tables they have served me well. Like Marie Kondo would say, I can thank them for their service. Right. Move them along. I got new tables that were just about 7 inches shorter, but now I could get into these doors and put all that junky stuff behind the walls in this space that was just sitting empty. So
Right.
I really feel like anyone, I was only making pillows. So obviously I had different equipment than a lot of workrooms do. I
Right.
totally get that. Not every workroom can look like mine did, but everybody can make changes. You can paint, you can put up a pretty curtain to hide some, ugly storage. You can tuck away things and close storage, bring in a pretty bookcase or a dresser instead of just having, plastic cheapy shelving.
Right.
So I really recommend people invest in themselves. And while I was going through this process, um, a few weeks into it, I was still deciding, I was making the changes in my space, but I hadn't, painted or wallpapered or anything yet. That was when I decided to stop making pillows. That was all happening at the same time. So once I realized I was no longer going to be doing the workroom things, that changed. Obviously, the equipment that I needed, I didn't need to have sewing machines and all that anymore. But it became even more important that I make my space pretty, because
Yes.
if I was going to be selling people on buying fabrics and wallpapers and lamps and whatever for their spaces,
Right.
my space needed to reflect that as well. And I also needed photos still to put on my new website that I needed to redo.
Right.
So I just kept going on that makeover of my spaces. And so I've got my loft space, which is kind of where I still have a big cutting table and I have big flat files that have all kinds of cut fabrics and pillow covers tucked in there. I painted that space and hung a big wall of botanicals, which is my favorite kind of artwork. And then in my office, I wallpapered it. I have more flowers and botanicals all around. I've got curtains in both spaces, which I never had before, but I paid someone to make those because I don't do laundry ones. But I got to pick all these fabrics that I wanted. I skirted my new tables. So I'm just surrounded by all this pretty stuff. And it's so much more pleasant to work here than it
Yeah.
used to be. It was worth
I
it.
I loved when you shared with the library community. People were saying, "Oh, your workroom is so beautiful." You were very clear that it is no longer a workroom,
Right.
but there are parts of your space that what I kept thinking was before I even updated my workroom a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
it just didn't feel welcoming. It was dark,
Right.
and I had to have lighting set up so I could see what I was doing. And when we painted it white, because it is a basement,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a couple things, like it was just so much nicer for me to go
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Had the opportunity to set up my office as I took over the library, it really was important to me to have fabrics and things in it that I love to look at because I was spending a lot of time in here.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
that's what I thought about when I like even if you are standing at a table and looking through fabrics, if I'm doing that on my work table right now, there's so much crap, pardon me, underneath my work table that
Right.
that can be distracting.
Yeah.
And I love that. There was a workroom local to me who had a very large basement, and she had segmented it off. She had her machines in one like closed off area, and her work table had a large um, ruffled skirt around it, and you could see
Mm-hmm.
nothing under it. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking, I don't know if I could do that, but there are times when I look at it, I go, I don't want to see all that stuff underneath
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
don't have to see it all the time. It needs to be there,
Yes.
but it doesn't have to take your mental, it doesn't have to affect your eyeballs. You can
Yes.
tuck it away.
Yeah.
It's still close by. Yeah. So
And
everybody can make some changes because you deserve to work in a space that brings you joy.
yes, and I'm going to comment on this. When we first sat down, we first started talking, you went to take a sip of water, and you have a beautiful blue cut glass
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
goblet that you are drinking water out of.
Yes.
I have an ugly Contigo with a screw on top that I think the bottom might be dented, and I'm thinking that is so. I remember reading books years ago about like little things in a day that you do that should be beautiful because they are for you. And I
Right.
mean, this is practical. I don't want a glass of water to fall over on my desk right now
Of
because it would
course.
be catastrophic. But just taking that time and having beautiful artwork around you, I can
Yeah.
see the edge of a Roman shade and it is gorgeous. Like those things, so many of us make beautiful things, but we don't necessarily have beautiful surroundings when we are working. And
Absolutely. It's like the cobbler's children, you know,
exactly,
you don't take
exactly.
care of everyone else, or you take
Yes.
care of everyone else, but not yourself.
And I do love when I get to speak with people in the industry and they're speaking to me from their workrooms, but I can see samples hanging on the wall and they're beautiful samples of valances and things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't have the space for that in my workroom, but it I have it's a rolling clothing rack that I attached pegboard to. And on one side of it, I have all of my rolls of welt cord in different sizes.
Mhm.
But on the one side, I have samples and I have just the long hooks that go in, and I've placed like
Mhm.
valances and a couple things. So a lot of times I just turn it to that side so that that's what
Right.
I'm looking at is the pretty
Yeah.
fabrics
The
and
prettier
not
side.
17 rolls of different sizes of welt cord.
Right.
So you're right. We have to have practicality in our workrooms, but that doesn't mean that we can't have beauty in them as well.
Yeah. Even the pens on my desk, they're all colorful. I don't like using a regular old black pen. I like
Okay.
to use a purple pen or a pink pen. And it's just those little things that no one else cares about, but they just make my day a little happier.
Right. And I think you said it few minutes ago. You had become Holly the entrepreneur, and the other Holly had disappeared. And I
Yeah.
think that bringing those things into our day and into our lives is really important. And
Yeah.
when our businesses count on us to keep going, that's one of the first things that we let go of is what pen do I choose to use? Not give me a
Yes.
pen. I need to write this down.
Right. Even like I keep a notebook next to my desk, and that's got my to do list for the day. And then it's got little notes that I'm making throughout the day that I may need to refer to later. Um, I had some extra notebooks that were left over from whatever. We got stuff free for something and it has some company's logo on the front. Like I refuse to use those notebooks because they don't bring me joy. I want
Right.
to use the pretty floral notebook that I bought on vacation that's going to remind me of being back there. It's just those
Yeah.
little things that make my day. I've got trays in my desk that keep different projects organized, and they're like have a cane design on them, and there's a blue one and a pink one and a green one, and just that little stuff just helps you get through the day a little better because it's
Yes.
it's more pleasant than just a stack of papers flying around everywhere.
Right, right. And I
Yeah.
find that especially in my workroom, I tend to be very practical about things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always considered myself an out of sight, out of mind person. So if I put things away, then I don't remember I have them. But if I leave things out, I'm overwhelmed by the visual clutter.
Yes.
So I have to
Yeah.
find a happy medium
Right.
there.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being better organized would help a lot. The sponsors of the So Much More podcast allow me to bring guests to you each week. And without them, I couldn't do it. I'm pleased as the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library that I can use the library to help sponsor the podcast as well. The library hosts the industry's largest curated collection of educational resources for the custom home furnishings professional. Membership to the library gives you access to a wealth of downloadable reference materials, videos, live events, as well as a community of support to help you develop your design, sales, and fabrication skills, and to grow or start a business. Join the library today at csfrl.org. The Workroom Channel is the premier online training provider for professional fabrication skills. Go to theworkroomchannel.com to browse the selection of anytime access courses created by industry experts. Watch detailed demonstration videos, download companion materials, and participate in private course discussion boards with your instructor and classmates from around the world. Start your course path today at theworkroomchannel.com. Education, networking, visibility, and industry discounts are just a few of the benefits that are offered to members of the Window Covering Association of America. The WCAA is the only national nonprofit trade association that's dedicated to the window coverings industry and the dealers, decorators, workrooms, designers, and installers that make up our membership. The library is a gold level sponsor of the WCAA. Join today at WCAA.org. WCAA, where you are never in business alone. Discover Klimaka Studios, where innovation meets exceptional design. Klimaka fabric and wallpaper collections are inspired by the original works of collaborating artists and developed with the understanding of how fabrics are manipulated into exquisite soft home furnishings. Workroom businesses enjoy exclusive access to engineered designs and best trade pricing. From clever layouts to classic linen prints, Klimaka Studios delivers the quality and consistency that your business demands. And Klimaka's reliable, on-time delivery keeps your projects running smoothly. Go to KlimakaStudios.com for swatches and trade account information. Klimaka Studios, for the joy and profit of workrooms. So, Hollie, tell us how you work with your clients now.
Okay. So some people will come to me and they have already done the work on their end. They know exactly what wallpaper they want to put in their kitchen, and they've already had their installer come over and measure, and they'd say, I need X product and X rolls, and will you help me place that order? And it's done. We're done. It's in stock. It's ready to go. They've received it within 3 or 4 days. Wonderful. Other people come to me and say, I want to redo my living room. Can you help me? So those are very different. So I also offer design consults now, which is something I took on about a year ago. I've been helping people at some level for many years, but realized I was spending a lot of time on that. Would this fabric go with my room?
Right.
Or can you help me find a green velvet that I can use for upholstery? Mm-hmm. And I realized I was sometimes spending hours at this because I'm a detailed person. I'm not a person that just says, here's something, work with it, it'll be fine.
Right.
I'm the person that's going to offer you 10 different options, and here's why this one is better than this one. Here's whatever. So I realized I needed to start charging for some of that time that I was giving away for free. So I now do design consults. So it could be, like I said, just helping someone find the perfect green velvet for their upholstered chair. It could be helping someone put together their entire living room. Mm. And I'm not necessarily doing the same thing that a full service interior designer would do. So I'm not really helping them with layout. I mean, a little bit here and there. Right. Typically, these consults are more about the fabrics, the trims, the wallpapers, like the fluffing part, the pretty parts. Not a little bit of furniture here and there. That's really more one-off. So when I talk to interior designers, I tell them, I'm kind of taking on the clients that you don't want. On social media, a lot of my clients follow a lot of interior designers, and they're the people they're asking, what paint color is that? What fabric is that? They're annoying the interior designer. They're not the ideal client for the designer, but they are for me because for whatever reason, they are not going to hire that designer for full service work. Either they don't have the time to dedicate to it and they want to do one project at a time, even one thing at a time, or they don't have the budget to do it all at once. They need to do it piecemeal. Or maybe they have hired an interior designer in the past and they were too bossy and they just did not like someone else being in charge. So they know they're a terrible client and they need to do it on their own, or they just love it. They don't really want the help from the designer. They just want the access to the good stuff. Right. These trade products that they can't get otherwise. So I work with people of all different levels that have all different reasons for coming to me. And like I said, some people are just that quick transaction. I'm just helping them buy something and move on. Other people I'm helping figure out what's going to go in their space. And then I've got someone right now, she's a design consult client, and I have the pressure of helping her find a space that will, let's see, how did she define it? She wants magic. She wants the magical space where her children play and dress up, but yet she and her adult friends will watch a football game, or they'll have a cocktail party, and she wants this space to like be perfect for everyone. So I have a lot of pressure because this space is very meaningful to their family. And I'm really getting a lot of enjoyment now being able to help people like this that I wasn't getting when the sewing was the larger percentage of my business. So it's been wonderful for me mentally. I can flex those design muscles that I really enjoy. I can take my industry knowledge that I've learned over the years. And I also just like, I like to get information. So if there's something I don't know, I'm not saying I don't know. I'm going to go out and find the answer, and then I'm going to know for next time. Right. So I'm still learning. I still am a member of the library. So I'm reading all these things that come in that they may be totally irrelevant to me, but I might pick up a little tidbit here and there that helps me answer a question for a client sometime.
Right.
So it's been really great. And I have been able to stop work at an appropriate time and have a life outside of my office, which was the goal.
Yeah. As beautiful as it is, that is not where you want to spend your whole life.
Absolutely. So I have a garden that I've been able to create, because before there was going to be no one to take care of it. I'm able to go on vacation now and not be so stressed about being away and gosh, all this work that's piling up while I'm gone, and it's going to be even worse when I get back. And of course, there's always, it's leaving for vacation when I work for myself. So there's no one to do the work when I'm not here. Right. So there's always a little bit of that, but I'm no longer taking my laptop on vacation with me and answering work emails at 10 o'clock every night after I get done with my day and, not getting enough sleep. I'm enjoying my time away and resetting so I can come back and be a happy worker again.
I love that. All right. So that being said, what is your definition of success?
Oh, gosh. I guess once upon a time, I would have thought it was being known for what I do. And I'm very proud of what I have built, and that I was, people really respected my business, and I'm happy about the brand that I've built. But now I've learned that the definition of success is doing what you enjoy and having a life outside of it. And my goal over the years has always been less work, more money. I mean, that should be everyone's goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like I've finally found that kind of sweet spot where, I could work more hours and I could advertise and I could bring in more business, but I'm happy with the pace of everything now. I feel like getting paid for what I'm worth, because when I was sewing, I was afraid to charge people too much. Right. I was working with individual, retail customers. I wasn't working with designers who were used to higher, price points. I was working with designers a little bit here and there. They would, instead of, if there's a fabric that has a 10-yard minimum or a 5-yard minimum and they just needed a pillow, they would come to me for that because I've already got it, so it was a little cheaper. But for the most part, I was working with retail customers for years, and they don't understand why it costs so much to have things made, because they don't have any idea what goes into it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say has been the greatest success for you so far, based on the fact that you've changed the way your business runs and you feel much happier now?
Yeah. I feel like I'm putting myself first for the first time, because I'm such a people pleaser that I was always putting other people first. Whether it was, I would never let a deadline go by. If I told you I was going to have something done by a certain date, I would do anything in my power, including being up all night, to get that done. Right. Even if something came up, I was still meeting that deadline. But because I was always putting other people first, like I said, I was disappearing. I didn't exist. So now that I'm putting myself first, I'm walking away when I need to. You know, in the afternoon, I'm going to take a walk to get some fresh air and walk around the neighborhood, or I'm taking the time to go on vacation and just, you know, zone out for a week or so. Um, I feel like all of those decisions I made that were hard decisions have resulted in where I am now, where I can be happy and feel successful despite having to let a lot of things go that I used to think were incredibly important, but in
Okay.
fact, were not.
Okay. I love that. So I'm curious about how you handle mistakes and failures. You mentioned earlier that you're a perfectionist. That is a common thread among those of us in the
Right.
industry. And has how you handle a mistake or failure changed as you've gone through this evolution in your business?
That's a good question. When I was making pillows, we all know that sometimes, like if you're putting, again, just thinking of pillows, when you're putting a trim on a pillow, sometimes it goes well, you're done, you move on. Sometimes it's just not laying right at the corner and it's just not doing what you want. And I could spend 2 hours futzing with a corner on a pillow, like just because I would not send it out until
Right.
I felt like it looked good, the way I would want it to be.
Right.
Um, but yet, even though I was spending all that time on the details and people would have no idea that I was, you know, spending that much time and investment and that wasn't getting paid enough for what I was doing. Um, when I would receive an email from a customer after a sale, I was always afraid that it was going to be something bad. Like they were going to say, the zipper's not working, or I don't
Yeah.
like, you know, this doesn't look good. Like,
That's the
even though I
phone
was,
call on the way home from an install. If I
yes,
see a designer's name pop up on my screen after an install, I'm like, oh no, what is
yeah,
this about? Yeah.
I I was being so pessimistic that instead of assuming the best and thinking they're appreciating my work, I'm afraid of, oh gosh, they didn't like it, and this anxiety would come over me. And then most of the time it was, oh, it's so wonderful, I'm so happy,
Right.
thank you, thank you. um, and now it's a little different because I'm not making things anymore. For the most part, I am ordering the product. Like if someone's, you know, ordering a lamp from me, I'm ordering the product from the vendor, it's getting drop shipped straight to the client, I'm never having to touch it. So sometimes, you know, somebody's ordered the wrong finish on the lamp, and so we're going to have to resend it. Um, so I feel like now I don't have as many points for failure as I maybe once did.
Right.
Um, but everything's fixable. I have to remind myself, like, this is decorating, you know, there's not an emergency.
Right.
Things are going to happen, things are going to arrive broken or the wrong finish, or,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, I guess the most anxious I have been in this new business model is a couple had bought some very expensive fabric. They were having a sofa custom made,
Mm.
and they had bought the fabric yardage through me. 8 months later, I heard from them saying they had these photos from the sofa maker, and there was like a line through the face of the sofa across the fabric. And I had to figure out what to do about it because they were spending $30,000 in total, I think, on this sofa, and it wasn't right. And that brought a lot of anxiety because I can't fix it myself. You know, I'm not the
Right.
one doing, I'm not providing the fabric, I'm not doing the work, but yet I had to take responsibility and do everything I could to make that right for them so that
Right.
they could be happy with their investment, and then hopefully they'll come back to me down the road for something else and won't have a
Right.
bad taste in their mouth from that
Right.
experience.
All right. So I'm dying to know, how did you fix that?
Oh, it took a lot of effort and a lot of weeks of pictures back and forth. I think it was really the upholsterer. They did not check in the fabric and inspect it when it
Yeah.
arrived.
Yeah.
So it was 8 months later. But
That's
also, um, why did they put this, you know, flaw on the face of the sofa? There was something really strange about it, and it wasn't an individual workroom, it was like a sofa maker.
mhm.
But eventually I was able to get the fabric company to send them new yardage.
Okay.
So I think I don't know if they had to pay for the new upholstery job or if the, you know, the sofa company did it because they maybe didn't do some things right on their end. But in the end, we sent them some extra fabric. They even had some extra yardage that they were able to make a throw to put over it because their dogs sit on it. So they, I think in the end, they were satisfied, but this is the first time they had spent a huge chunk of money on having something custom made. And so they had just been so disappointed in the process and were afraid to ever do it again.
Right. And I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I remember reading at some point, and I've said this a number of times on the podcast, that if you have a problem with a client and you solve it for them, their impression of your service and your product is far greater than if you deliver exactly what you say and nothing goes wrong, because they see how you handle a situation. And as you said, you had to take responsibility for it. You had to make it, you had to fix it or create a process that could fix it.
Yeah.
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 And I think that's what people miss in a lot of service businesses right now. They don't feel like someone's listening to them, and they don't feel like it matters or that it will get fixed.
Yes. I think anytime I would receive a message, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens. Anytime I receive a message that there's something wrong, I try not to, I want to solve it as quickly as I can. But if it's something that's kind of complex, I try to walk away and think about it for a while. And because I don't want to have to send messages back and forth. I want the process to be as painless as possible for the client. And see what I can solve without their involvement.
Yes.
Because like you said, it's, I don't want to stress them out any further. They're already stressed out because things aren't going as planned. So I will, try to take care of the problem. Sometimes it's a shipping issue and their item that they've been waiting for is stuck in customs. And, I could just let it take 3 weeks to get through customs, or I could, reach out to FedEx and say, what can I do and how can I help? Just whatever I can do. I want to leave that good impression, like you said, and customer service is so important to me, and it always has been. So I always try to lead with kindness and just make people feel appreciated for their business, but also keep as much stress off of them during the process as I can. I tend to be wordy. And I give a lot of information, as you might understand from this podcast recording. But I've realized over the years that if I can get the information culled down to the fewer number of words, that will also help the client, because they don't understand all the details and they really don't care.
Right.
They just want,
and that's hard for us because the details matter to us.
Right. And we need to provide those details, but they don't always have to know the nitty-gritty in between. They just want to know that it's going to look great in the end.
And that you fix the problem.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
I love that. So I always love to ask about books. Are you a book reader? Have you read any books that have made a difference or an impact on you that you could share with us?
I am not a book reader myself. I do listen to podcasts, more in like the business side of marketing and branding. That's kind of always been my thing. And because the interior design aspect has always been what I've been interested in, I listen to a lot of podcasts where interior designers are interviewed. And even though that's not exactly my role, I'm learning things from them that I can apply to my business. I am a member of the All You Need Method group, which they are a PR agency. Really, it's two ladies. And it's not just PR though, because I'm really not spending time going out looking for PR opportunities exactly as people think PR is, but it's a lot of branding too. It's how do you message, what you do. So people come to my website, and right now there's a lot of words that some people know exactly what those words mean, and some people are overwhelmed by all those words. So how can I cull those down into the message I really want people to leave with, so they know what services I provide, what the next steps are. So that's kind of a lot of the business help that I focus on, is a lot of branding. Now, I did take a class with Workroom Tech in the fall. Love Workroom Tech and what they provide. So it was an Ottomans class with Lori Medford because
Oh,
I
okay.
found an Ottoman on Facebook Marketplace that I want to use for my living room, and it has an fabric that has seen better days. So I want to be able to recover it myself so I can understand the process better for my
Love
clients
that.
down the road.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've done the class and I've listened to the lessons, but I haven't actually gone to do the work yet because I'm still stuck on what fabric I'm going to use on it.
That's the
So it
worst for
sits.
us. We have too much to choose from.
It is. When you know all the possibilities that are out there, it's so hard to narrow
Yes.
down. And of
Yeah.
course, every design decision kind of affects other things. So I want to do
Right.
a green ottoman, but I've got a green chair already. So then do I want to recover the green chair? And it's a whole domino effect. So yeah,
Yeah.
so just little things like that. And like I said, reading submissions on the library, and listening to podcasts like yours where it's not always 100% applicable to me, but there
Right.
might be just a little bit that I can learn that will help my business down the road.
I love that. I love that. That's so funny because I do think we are our own worst clients. And because whatever we pick, a fabric we like better will come across our tables next week.
Oh,
So that
absolutely.
part's so hard.
When I was redoing my office, the reorganizing part was maybe the easy part. It was the figuring out the design scheme.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up hiring an interior designer friend as to do a consult with me because I was just spinning and spinning and could not decide. And she just helped me stop and think and make decisions and move on. And sure enough, the fabric I chose as my hero fabric, 2 months later, I came across the perfect fabric. But I was already committed to this one, and
Right.
the skirts were already made. So I
Yes.
did do sewing for my own office. I made table skirts.
Okay.
That was a new thing for me, and they're ruffled on the edges, and the way they had to attach to the underneath my tables was a little complicated. So I got some help from that on ideas of how to make that work. But that was good learning for me, is making those table skirts. I'm a perfectionist, and like I said, I only know what I know. So I
Right.
read all the books and looked at the online tutorials, and there was nothing that quite matched exactly what I needed to do. But I made it through, and I did my sewing project, and I was happy when that was done.
Yeah. So I love that you're so willing to invest in understanding the adjacent industries and
Mhm.
craftspeople who are are necessary for what we do, because there are a lot of people who are like, all right, that's not my wheelhouse, here you go take care of that, but you're so willing to understand what it takes. And now, having made table skirts, you understand that it's, oh, I want a little skirt around my sink. Okay, there's a process, and there's each sink is different, and
Right.
you start to understand what you don't know. And I think
Absolutely.
that's brilliant.
Absolutely. And I will give my clients as much information as I can, but I
Mhm.
always tell them before we decide on the final yardage, you need to check with your upholsterer, and because they might be doing things a little different than what I think they
Right,
might be doing, or your workroom. Maybe I'm assuming X number of inches for a header, but they're going to do it in a different way. And
right,
and I never want to assume. I can give people an idea, but
right.
I always insist that they get the final quantities, or from their wallpaper hanger.
Okay,
I understand repeats, and I understand how to fill a room with wallpaper,
right,
but there's going to be something that I don't know about their technique or how much waste they need.
right.
So
Or
yeah,
what a particular room, if a paper hanger has been in the client's home, there might be a situation that they know is going to require a little bit more. Right,
yes. And people will send me dimensions all the time and photos, and so those will allow me to give them an idea.
right. An
But
idea.
I an idea, but I
I
always
lo-
insist they go to the expert for that final, yeah,
Okay,
final quantity.
all right. Holly, do you use a lot of technology in your business?
I do. So I have a website on Shopify.
Hmm.
So I had to learn how to set that up, and I do all of the look of the website behind the
Right.
scenes. I do all of that. My husband used to do my bookkeeping for me, but as of this year, I have taken that over. So I just finished up my tax stuff for the year. That was not my favorite part of business, but I've been using QuickBooks for that, so I've got to figure that out. Um, a year and a half ago, I switched from being a sole proprietor to a corporation, which was something that my CPA had recommended after many years in business. I had to do all that switching over, which also was not very fun. But I now have to do payroll. So even though I'm still the only employee of my business, right, I have to do payroll. So I have that system that I'm dealing with. I guess I don't use a lot of technology. I never used technology for like quoting or anything like that before, like workroom type of technology. But I use a lot of visuals, when I'm doing a design scheme for someone's room. I'm gathering information and I'm using, I'm putting it all in PowerPoint together, or I'm using Canva to create some marketing things. Yeah. So lots of technology here and there. Not my favorite thing, but it's all necessary.
Right.
Or even photo editing. When I had the pillow shop, I took all of my own photos for the shop of the pillows, and I would have to edit them, and I made it work.
Okay. Yeah. What 3 business items could you not live without?
Well, my laptop is, I guess, the number one thing. And because not only do I communicate there, but that's where I go out and look for pricing and communicate with my vendors and the clients. And then I mentioned my pens and my notebook. Those are essential to me. I used to use just like the back of like a scrap piece of paper. I like a packing slip that came with fabric. I would keep that and I would use the back of it, and that's where I would kind of take my notes for the day. So if I'm coding something for somebody or making some kind of notes as throughout my day or thinking through something, I would write it on that paper and then I would put it in my recycle bin. But I felt like I was always going like digging back in that recycle bin to look for things that I wanted to reference. So that's why I now use the notebook, because now it's all together there, and then I just tuck that away. And it's there. So my notebook is essential. It has to be a spiral so I can flip it back, and just those little things, and my pretty pens.
Okay. I love
so those
that.
are kind of my essentials. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had anybody say the pretty pens part of it, but I like that.
Yeah, it just brings a little joy to my day. And I like the variety. If I'm, all these little notes that I'm taking through the day, I'm writing down what samples somebody ordered so I can go get them ordered, and I'm writing down like my price, and then I'm figuring out what, the price to the client will be. And, maybe for one person I'm writing it in orange, and for the next person I'm writing it in pink. And so it just keeps it organized on my page that way.
Okay, I love that. So there's a question I ask most people, and ordinarily I would have left it off for you, but I left it on purpose because of the fact that we've talked about this. Do you do any sewing for pleasure?
I do not. I put off, this is just my personality, I put off things that make me anxious, or that I'm not sure how to go about them, or that I'm not excited about. I can go do a deep dive on something that I'm really jazzed about, but other things that are on my list, they just linger there forever, including sewing projects. So I have had pillow pieces cut for my living room for probably 2.5 years now, sitting in my drawer, and I have not made the pillows. I have this ottoman project that I mentioned that is waiting for me to pick out fabric, but I've kind of put it on the back burner, not just about the fabric, but once I pick the fabric, I know I need to do it. To do the upholstery. I've got fabric that I've had for 1.5 years for my dining room chairs. I know it'll be easy. They're slip seats. It's not a big deal. It's just the doing that I'm not as good about as I am about making the lists. So no, I don't sew for fun. I sew for the finished result. Okay. I will do it if I need to.
But you shouldn't make me.
No. As a matter of fact, my sewing machine is still sitting on the table behind me where it sat for many years, and I have not put it away yet, because every once in a while, like there'll be a pocket, of a clothing that needs just a little reinforcement or something. But my husband was complaining last night. He can't even get a button fixed around here because I just don't enjoy sewing. And that's just hand sewing, but still.
Yeah. I think this is so funny that this is the industry we're in, and you started out with sewing, and that is not your favorite thing to do.
It's just not my thing, no.
Okay. what is your favorite thing to do in this business, in your business?
In this business, in my business, my favorite thing is the scheming of the room, putting together the design scheme. Um, and yeah, I mentioned this client who wants like the magic in a bottle feeling for her living room. And I feel a lot of pressure to pick this perfect thing. And she actually had done a consult with two interior designers before me. And when she reached out to me for help, she didn't like what they ended up presenting. And so then she thought, well, let me try out Hollie. And I had asked her, well, what kept you from moving forward in the past? So she told me that this room just has a lot of kind of weight behind it. 'Cause it's also the center of the room, of the house, and so every other decorating decision she'll make kind of centers on this one room and the color palette. Well, she sent me the design schemes that these two other interior designers had presented her before, and she told me like what she ended up not liking about it. And one of the names I saw on the scheme was a big time interior designer. Like she's international. She's one of my favorites. And I thought, oh my gosh, if this lady could not make her happy, how in the world could I? Like, this is not even what I do full time, the scheming part. And she's just like, no, don't feel pressured about this. So I'm doing it really differently. We're taking one step at a time, and I'm bringing her along. So instead of presenting to her one scheme, like take it or leave it, like it or not. We're talking through, and we're looking at fabrics together, and I'm narrowing them down, but then I'm presenting to her, like, what do you think about these 20 hero fabrics? Like, what's really calling to you? And then we'll narrow that down to 2, and then we're finding the other things to go along with it. So that is what really makes me excited, is kind of working on those schemes. And then also just in general, helping people get the products that they otherwise can't have access to, that I know is helping them create a unique home that's specific to them and doesn't look like everybody else's. That just brings me a lot of joy.
Okay. What do you like least about what you're doing?
Probably the bookkeeping, of course. That's everybody's answer, right?
Yeah, it's a common answer. It's not everybody's, but it's common.
Yeah. And then, like I said, there's some people that order a ton of samples. So it's just kind of that, just getting those samples ordered, because they send me the order, but then I've got to go out and order it with the various vendors, and then just making sure those arrived safely, and, following the tracking and following what people, so just kind of the little nitty-gritty stuff that you need to do. And every weekend, I might come into work on Monday, and I've got a lot of those because people have their time over the weekend to think. Right. And so Mondays are always just a lot of that kind of grunt work.
Okay.
Following up on the messages that come in and the sample orders that are placed. And then as the week goes on, I can get back to the more fun stuff.
Okay. What do you do extremely well?
Details. So if you want to know how something works, I'm going to tell you all the information, more than you ever wanted to know. And I think just communicating in general. I'm try to balance that, giving you just the right amount of information that's not overwhelming, depending on what your communication style is, and helping someone feel comfortable that they're taken care of.
Okay. What do you not do so well?
Time management, I guess.
Yeah, that's a struggle for a lot of us.
Yeah, I just find that suddenly hours have gone by and I haven't done the things that were on my list. I'm always doing something.
Yes.
But the prioritizing is not always so good.
Okay. Yeah. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I will hopefully be doing what I'm doing now. Okay. And where I was going with this is my husband would like to retire, but because I kind of left a job that could have made me more money in a shorter period of time way back when, I kind of vowed that I'll just kind of keep working as long as I can, as long as it makes sense, because I'm working from home, and I could really work from anywhere. So if we wanted to travel, I could do that and still work if need be. Right. We could be gone for an extended period of time. So I hope that I'll be doing more traveling with him. Okay. But also I think just continuing what I'm doing now, maybe adding some new, services that kind of come up over time that are an extension of what I'm already doing. But I feel like I'm in a good place. I feel like I can finally have that balance that was eluding me in years past. And
Okay.
I want to make sure that I'm still finding myself as a person, which has
Hmm.
been something I've been working on the past couple of years now.
Okay.
Finding who I am outside of my job, and not, you know, when I meet someone for the first time, they're meeting Hollie the person and not just Hollie the business owner
I
anymore.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that, Holly. So, before I ask the final question, how can people find you, or what social media are you on? And I'll put links to everything. So if you just
Okay.
tell us where to find you, I'll put all the links in the show notes.
Well, my website is stuckonhue.com. So stuck on Hue, HUE.com. My Instagram and Facebook are the same at Stuck
Okay.
on Hue. So that's where to find me in all
Okay.
those spots.
Okay. I'll make sure I have links for that. So
Okay.
I'm curious from the standpoint of someone who came into this as a sewing business and now it has evolved into something else. What advice would you give to someone either new coming into this business or
Mhm.
someone who's been around for a while or both?
Yeah, well, I'm actually coaching, so I'm doing business coaching. I'm the coach
Okay.
with someone who is trying to start a pillow business, and that has
Okay.
been really fascinating to think back and try to share with her the things that I have learned over the years, that will hopefully help her to be more efficient faster and have a more successful business faster. So the things that I have learned are definitely to give it your all, but also not lose yourself in the
Okay.
process, and to figure out how to charge what you're worth. Because if you start out, I heard a podcast a while back. This woman was making these cakes, and they're these, I forget what they're called, but these cakes that don't look like something else. So it's like it's a cake, but it looks like a football or whatever.
Right, right.
And she was charging a low amount to get kind of break into the arena of that. But someone had bought one of her cakes and taken it to a party, and her friends were admiring it. And she's like, yeah, you know, you can buy it from so and so and it only cost X. Well, then that word is being
Yes.
spread that it only costs X. You're a bargain. You're a value.
Yes.
I don't want to be that. I want to be I want to be the person who has the expertise and is giving you something that is worth the price that I'm charging for it.
I
And to help you
love that.
understand that it's worth that, and you're happy with what you spent in the end because you've gotten what you need and you
Right.
feel good about how we got there.
I love that. That is great advice. Holly, I have so enjoyed this conversation
Yeah.
and I've enjoyed understanding what you do a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I know you and I talked about featuring your workroom in the Drapery and Design Digital Digest. And
Yes.
while some of us who have industrial workrooms maybe can't aspire to quite the look that you have, it can
Right.
inspire us a little bit to work in a prettier area.
I hope
Um,
so. For a while, I was feeling a little kind of unsure about where I fit in because I'm pretty unique. I don't know anyone else that does what I
right,
do.
right,
So I felt a little like, well, I'm not a workroom. I really never felt like a workroom, even when I was making pillows, because like no one was bringing their stuff to me.
right,
I didn't even know workrooms. I didn't know how they got started and how they did their thing. I was a retail business, but yet I was
right.
kind of a workroom. So I always felt like I was kind of doing my own thing. And I'm not an interior designer, but I do some interior design things. And
Right.
I feel like I finally feel comfortable with my place in the world. And also, I'm really happy to have my workspace shared because exactly like you said, not everybody's space can look exactly like that. But the idea is, you know, what can you do to make your space more beautiful for you every day?
Right. I love that. Holly, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's been wonderful talking to you, Seal.
I really hope that you enjoyed hearing from Holly today. I love that there was yet another business model in our industry that we could talk about. And I loved how Holly shared her journey and how she came to decide what was coming back into the business and what was not. And it's just was so amusing to me to talk with someone and ask some questions about sewing and have them not be as excited as so many of us are about what started our business for us. So it was just such a great, uh, different perspective. And I love that Holly has found a niche where she can provide a service and do something that she really enjoys doing. I really hope you enjoyed hearing from Hollie today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.